Alright guys, so I went ahead and actually pre-record, I kind of did some screen recording off camera on 12 of my arena runs for you guys, just so that we can get an impression of how Gyan actually affects my arena run. So let's kind of talk about my team setup first. So my main tanks that I usually go with is either Penelope or the O. I think there are two specific fight where I did not use Penelope, and you guys will see why in just a bit. But those are pretty much my main go-to as far as like just taking out the enemy. My up next is obviously going to be Gyan. I think Gyan, right, not running Gyan in this meta actually does hurt a lot, because not doing the AoE EXQ damage from Gyan is like, dude, if you're not using that, you are pretty much losing all of your fight pretty much, and that's like gotta be like a must. The other one that I'm always going to be using is probably going to be the Yellow Sasabi, because Yellow Sasabi from time to time can be a main clutch of the team, like meaning being able to just wipe things up. And I would definitely say Zeta is kind of like that unit that you can pretty much interchange to depending on the situation. I would say right now the thing you should counter the most is kind of like either yellow or purple. So those are kind of like the two swing unit color that you might want to swap out. And from time to time, maybe you run across like a lot of like blue element units. Then at that point, I'll probably swap in my green new Gundam. But other than that, I think Zeta kind of does the job a lot more better in this environment when the enemy does not target Zeta specifically. So from time to time, you guys will see that Zeta EXQ could provide that extra push where you can just take down an enemy. So that was kind of my finding to it. But other than that, I feel like this overall team using Gyan was pretty fun to use. I would definitely have to say, if you guys are like a new player and you're not really the most knowledgeable in terms of positioning, pretty much having Gyan allows you, it alleviates that problem. Well, first thing you want to do is you want to put your tanks as far as away as where the enemy would be targeting you, so you know that the target or the enemy would be targeting your tanks. So you want to make it really hard for them to actually go through your tanks, so that the longer it takes for them to reach your tanks, the better or the higher advantage of your tanks surviving. So that's what I did. As far as my DPS, now they're actually going to be in the front row. It does not really matter a whole lot depending on the situation. I'm just putting them in the front so my DPS can reach the target as fast as possible. Like Gyan or Sasabi, they want to be as closest to enemy as possible. So if there are situations where the enemy are just literally right in front of my face, I'm gonna put them right up in the face so we can start sniping them. So that's kind of the whole idea of things. But I would say there are some specific situations where you do not want to put the enemy, like your own unit, against the enemy, like face to face. A situation is when you are either facing the O or you are facing off the enemy GPO2, because GPO2 honestly is pretty hard to gauge from my personal experience. I find it hard to gauge whether or not they took enough hit or they have accumulated enough EXQ where they can pop their AoE EXQ on me. If the enemy does pop their EXQ on GPO2, most of the time it results in me dying. So that's why I try not to take care of the enemy GPO2 first. If they are running like 4 Omega and Thunderbolt, that's kind of my main target to ramp up the damage. And as we take down one tank at a time, it will refocus their attention to some of the other unit on their team, and sometimes it does not always target the other tank immediately after that, so it kind of buys me some time to like, alright, kind of do something else. But other than that, I mean, like, that's kind of like the only thing to watch out for, because like the O is kind of another one you don't really want to touch immediately depending on your lineup, because you just don't want the O to start supercharging the EX gauge, and when that does happen, well, you know what's gonna go down. So that's just kind of how I'm seeing it. I think right now, as you guys are watching this, I am actually facing off an enemy gang. So this is a situation I found the O a little bit more superior in terms of using it over Penelope, and we can kind of take a look at why. The problem with Penelope over the O is the fact that Penelope is not like a unit that you want to have every attack kind of center on the unit, just because of the fact there's no way of actually recovering HP. So that's the weak point. Penelope is good in a situation when you are kind of doing, let's say, like a 3v1 or even like a 2v1, where the amount of attacks is not too concentrated, where you're not losing a lot of the guard rate. So at that point in time, you're kind of like at a good point. But once you start getting targeted, you get a lot of concentrated attack in Penelope's way, it start dying. So that's kind of something I don't like about Penelope in a way. And the fact that there's no HP regen, that is a big problem as well. So I mean, from time to time, I do feel like the O had kind of gained an upper advantage on that. So I was like, why not just try the O? But in terms of the O, I'm just gonna quickly give you guys like a rundown of my setup. I do have it at custom level 14 at the time of the recording, and I am packing more HP. So I think it's 1 HP and then 1 evasion module. And you do have to have some good investment into your unit enhancement. I think I have it at 14% extra evasion and then maybe over 20k extra HP. So that in combination with everything should be enough to survive the initial hit from Sasabi. And I mean, at that point in time, I do hope that you can start evading, then you gain back your EX skill gauge, you gain back HP, and you start just popping them the enemy one at a time. So that's kind of how I'm seeing it. But if you do run into a very poor situation where you get sniped with a unavoidable status, then at that point in time, there's not really much you can do. You kind of deserve to lose that one in a way, because you shouldn't even have gotten targeted. So that's kind of how I'm seeing. But right now, it's just kind of me talking about kind of how I feel about it after using it for 2 days straight, and it's been pretty good. I'm less consistent on my positioning. It doesn't really matter all that much. But if you guys are watching, if you guys are more of a veteran, you guys are constantly within like the top rankings, you guys can definitely let me know, or let people know down in the comment section below how the positioning has changed for you guys. Like, and definitely do let me know how my positioning is for a lot of these setup, because I know my setup is not the perfect, and I will openly admit I'm terrible in arena. All right, I don't. There's no shame. I have no shame in admitting it, because I'm just not that good, despite the fact that I have well for a lot of these units. Does not mean I'm the best. Does not mean I'm good. But other than that, I think I am going to leave it as it is. I think I mean, like right now, I couldn't. There's just not a lot I can think about talking about. I think in next week around, we'll probably do more of like an in-depth where I'm actually taking on the stages live with you guys, or I'm recording and doing the Phantom Mist at the same time, so we can kind of get a more constructive thought of like, at that point in time, what is my thought process? Like, why am I putting things to where they are? So I think we'll definitely do that next week. But at this point in time, I just kind of want you guys to see my general team setup and just the overall enemy positioning, and see how they kind of interact and how we were able to take them down. I know in terms of just the overall gameplay itself, it doesn't really do justice in terms of like how things turn out to be where they are, but that is just the nature of this game. That's as much as I can say. But I'm gonna leave you guys right here, and I'll be catching you guys all on the next one.
私に出会った不幸を呪うがいい。EX スキルが落ちろ。EX こいつ。終わり。落ちろ。伊賀さん。作戦終了です。見事な勝利です。
チャンスは最大限に生かす。それが私の主義だ。
戦闘準備をお願いいたします。作戦開始です。
ペッシモンターン行きます。
EX スキルの発動を確認。
落ちろ
EX
落ちろ。バカに直撃させる。
EX スキルの発動を確認。
チャンスは最大限に生かす。それが私の主義だ。
戦闘準備をお願いいたします。作戦開始です。
ペッシモンターン行きます。
身がつらえ。
EX スキルの発
バカな。直撃させる。